Wow, it's been quite a year for elections around the world, and Lithuania was no exception. In 2024, the country had its presidential election where Gitanas Nausėda was voted in for a second term. There were also EU parliamentary elections, which Lithuania obviously participated in as a member of the Union, and most recently, in October, Lithuania held its parliamentary elections. It's clear that the country wanted a change from the previous politicians governing the country. And so, with the draft agenda now released by the newly elected coalition government, let's use today's video to take a look at the direction Lithuania will be moving towards, right after the intro. This video is sponsored by Radio LT. More about the app at the end of this video. So the new government is headed by the Social Democratic Party of Lithuania, LSDP, and is a coalition with two other parties, Demokratų Sąjunga Vardan Lietuvos and Nemuno Aušra. The coalition itself could be its own video since LSDP had promised before the election not to work with Nemuno Aušra. Vardan Lietuvos was formed after a division and infighting with another party, and as for Nemuno Aušra, its leader, Remigijus Žemaitaitis, has been the focus of a lot of negative attention due to remarks considered to be anti-Semitic. Again, that whole drama and the protests that went along with it could be its own video, but today we're just looking at the new government's agenda. The most interesting points about the LSDP's new agenda was reported by LRT English in early December, and since that's the most summarized source, let's first take a look at what it has to say. On the topic of China and foreign policy, the new Prime Minister, Gintautas Paluckas, has said that he wants to improve relations with Beijing and restore full diplomatic ties with China. You may recall that relations deteriorated between Lithuania and China after Taiwan set up its Taiwan Representative Office in Vilnius, rather than go with the less controversial Taipei Representative Office. The difference might be a few letters, but the People's Republic of China considered this to be an acknowledgement of Taiwanese sovereignty, which of course is a big no-no. So yes, the new government may want to improve relations with the biggest manufacturing power. However, as reported by LRT, the draft program pledges that the incoming government will develop economic and cultural ties with Taiwan due to China becoming a quote-unquote growing challenge for Lithuania's foreign and security policy. And so to me, it sounds like this new government will try to get the best of both worlds. And, as with many things in this video, we'll have to wait and see how that turns out. On the topic of defense and military spending, the government wants to allocate at least 3.5% of GDP to this sector. It's also committed to hosting the 4,000-strong German brigade by late 2027. The government will continue to support Ukraine and wants to have a target of at least 0.25% of Lithuania's GDP go towards aid for the war-torn country. On social welfare and education, the government wants to have a greater focus on things like child benefits and better accessibility to health services and education. There will also be a review of imposed entry exams that have been implemented by schools. The government sees these exams as an unfair limitation of access to education, particularly when such schools are near the homes of children and families. Also on the agenda is creating a centralized school entry system. For labor and workers' rights, the agenda wants to make it easier for unions to strike, as well as to establish liability for both individuals and organizations for cracking down on trade unions. When it comes to electricity, there was an earlier policy that allowed for full electricity market liberalization. However, this new government says that the most vulnerable households will be able to return to the public electricity supplier. Building of 2 offshore wind farms is also set to continue under this government, and the government will encourage the ongoing construction of decentralized solar power capacity. A special commission will be set up to analyze case studies to cut red tape. And as a little side note here, the topic of bureaucracy impacting investment in business and economics was recently discussed in my video on Latvia and Lithuania with 2 former government ministers in attendance. But on the environment, the government plans to expand forests in the country, reduce clear cutting, improve livestock farming, and promote ecological farming and accessibility to fresh produce. Lithuania will also strive to become carbon neutral before the 2050 EU deadline and stop declines in biodiversity. LRT adds that in 2025, the government will be focused on assessing the impact of possible tax reform on competitiveness, people's purchasing power, and consumption habits. And so we won't know for a while how taxes will be changing, even if there are some hints in the agenda. We do know, however, that the new Prime Minister, Paluckas, has been quoted as saying, "This government is committed to increasing redistribution, but it has to be adequate and weighted, and everyone has to understand how much the state asks from them and what this money will be spent on." Now, when I look at a translated version of the LSDP agenda myself, here are some interesting quotes that I pulled from their 52-page document. Now, it's a really long document, and so there are a lot of interesting things. I just picked out a few, but I would encourage you to check out the document for yourself if you're interested in all the details. So the government will guarantee that all Lithuanian people, regardless of their differences in situation, will be protected from poverty, and they'll receive good healthcare and will have all the opportunities to live with dignity. On defense and security, the government will actively seek to strengthen the European and transatlantic partnership. And then when state-owned energy company Ignitis Group was counting record profits, its customers did not feel any relief and experienced the contrary. That is why it is important to put safeguards in place to tighten the rules to regulate prices so that companies that provide vital, essential services are not driven solely by the pursuit of profit when many people are barely able to survive. We will implement changes to the minimum income system that will help to free as many people as possible from the poverty trap. We will relax the requirements for those applying for social assistance so that the level of absolute poverty in the country will significantly decrease. We will not allow food to be wasted. We will change the last day of validity of food sales so as not to delay the handing over of food to non-governmental charities. We will address the problem of service prices of apartment building maintenance companies as they are still inflated and do not correspond to market value. We will aim to significantly increase the income of the country's budgets through the tax system. The wealthier must contribute more to the financing of the country's public services. Attention to the use of the Lithuanian language in the modern world is gaining new relevance. Therefore, we will pay special attention to the implementation of the requirements of the law on the state Lithuanian language, and we will make efforts to develop the culture of the Lithuanian language. And the final point, which I thought was interesting, we will facilitate the conditions for issuing building permits, coordinating projects, and handing over production facilities. We will create equal conditions for Lithuanian and foreign investors. Now, any political party's platform is going to promise a lot, and may be quite detached from reality, whether it's figuring out how to pay for certain promises, or realizing that certain policies will face huge opposition and resistance, or result in decreased economic activity. As a foreigner, my knowledge of Lithuanian politics is limited, and so there's only so much news in Lithuanian media that I can absorb, so I decided to ask some locals about their views of things. There are some openly biased perspectives, and ones that may not really be supportive of this political party. But I think that is still helpful in being critical of all the shiny new promises being made. And so here are some things that I've been told. This party, the LSDP, has been known to say one thing and then do another. So it's difficult to know where they actually stand with China and Taiwan. It is said that the last LSDP prime minister, who was in office between 2012 and 2016, was famous for changing his mind like 5 times a day. On the topic of defense, the new incoming PM was on the record as being against raising defense spending from 2% to 2.5%, and so this big increase is quite a big shift. For taxes and the economy, the LSDP has never implemented progressive tax rates, and the previous ruling party has actually come closer to it. Again, it's notable that the incoming government is a coalition. The LSDP will have 9 ministerial portfolios: finance, defense, culture, social security and labor, transport, healthcare, education, foreign affairs, and the interior. The Don of the Nemunas, or Nemuna Ashra, will have ministers in charge of agriculture, environment, and justice. And so I'm told that because of this, big farmers will have their way, while small and medium-sized farms will suffer. Many important regulations will be dropped as well. It's notable that the new Minister of Agriculture is a major farmer who himself was involved in organizing the tractor protests earlier in 2024. And then on culture, Lithuania's incoming culture minister made the news for saying that the country should not censor everything linked to Russian culture, as he argued that it belongs to Lithuania's Russian-speaking citizens who are not blamed for the Russian government's actions. As reported by LRT, this politician said, "Many people of Russian ethnicity live in Lithuania. They are Lithuanian citizens and are probably loyal to Lithuania as their homeland. Therefore, to immediately put a negative label on their ethnicity and their culture, I think is completely wrong, inadequate, and politicians should not behave in such a way." He also believes that there should not be a blanket ban on Russian artists coming to perform in Lithuania. Well, I think in today's environment, with everything going on in Ukraine, that is a hugely unpopular position, which makes sense to me as to why it made the news. But I suppose it's too early to tell how many criticisms of the new government's plan are valid. However, there do seem to be some big changes ahead, while on other things, the government will stay the course set by the outgoing government. But yeah, there is already a lot to digest and take in. I thought I would end the video by taking a closer look at Lithuania's new Prime Minister, Gintautas Paluckas. He was born on August 19, 1979 in Panevėžys. In 2003, he graduated from Vilnius University's Faculty of Mathematics and Informatics with a bachelor's degree as a program systems specialist. And when it comes to work experience, he was the Lithuanian Social Democratic Party chairman for 3 years, and before that, he spent 7 years with IMUS as their director. The company makes battery management systems. Before that, Paluckas spent 2 years as director of Vilnius Municipality Administration, and before that, he spent 2 years as an advisor to a member of European Parliament. And then finally, before that, he was a senior specialist with Sodra. It's funny, but kind of cool, that the official government website for candidates allows them to list hobbies and other information. This is what Paluckas has to say about his hobbies. I have been fishing since I was a child. I hope that children will also take over this hobby. Like many Lithuanians, I like to play basketball, but as I age, I need to take longer and longer breaks between games to allow my body to recover. A good year ago, I became interested in raising chickens and ducks. I don't do it in the city, but at the homestead in the countryside, there is already a large group of birds that make me happy. Again, there is a lot of information to take in, and that's not even the full picture. But if you've been following Lithuanian politics, do let me know what you think of the incoming coalition government and the new prime minister. My huge thanks to the sponsor of this video, Radio LT. If you're a Lithuanian living abroad, you can stay connected to the heart of the country wherever you are with the Radio LT app, which is exclusively for iPhones. This single app brings you Lithuania's top radio stations, streaming music, news, and talk shows. Download Radio LT today from the App Store to stay informed, entertained, and connected with Lithuanian media, and enjoy an exclusive 3-month free trial of the premium plan with our promo code. Find the link in the video description. So that's it for me. Thanks again to Radio LT for the support, and thank you for watching.